All right, today's topic is factors of life and all of the energy flow within an ecosystem. When we talk about the factors of life, we really want to look at the idea of a limiting factor. A limiting factor is a thing that is in low supply, high demand, and if you don't have it, you're not going to make it. So when we think about humans, we need food, water, and shelter. And all three of those things could be in limiting supply. But the limiting factor is the thing that's going to kill you the fastest. Of food, shelter, and water, if we go without water, we die within 2 days at the most. And so that becomes the limiting factor for humans. The next limiting factor, if we had enough water, is going to be food. Now, depending on the environment, shelter is not as big of a deal, especially in our Southern California environment. If we were in the tundra, it would be a different story. Climate refers to the average amount of precipitation and the average temperature in a given year. This is different than weather. Weather is what you're going to look up on the app every day to figure out what you're going to wear. Climate is on average. So I live in Rancho Santa Margarita, and our average temperature is probably about 75, 78 degrees, which means on average, that's what we're going to hit. Now, do we have days at 110? Yes. Do we have days at 40? Yes. But if I were to average all of the temperatures together, I get that 75, 78 degrees. Depending on your latitude, there are three main climate zones on Earth that we talk about. At the top and bottom of the globe, we have our polar regions. So we have the North Pole and the South Pole. At the North Pole and the South Pole, it is always cold. Even in their summer months, it is still cold. So the sun's going to hit at an extreme angle, so you're never going to get that great radiation of solar energy, and so it's going to be cold all the time. Next, between the poles and the equator, or the equatorial zone, is the temperate area. You guys, we live just on the edge of the temperate. So we are temperate. We do have seasons. They're not very distinct seasons. It's not like we live in Michigan where you have really hot summers and really cold winters, but we do have a seasonal difference between summer and winter. The angle of the sun changes over the year, leading to greater variance in temperature. And then we have tropic. Tropic lies between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. We are just above the Tropic of Cancer. In this area, the sun is almost directly ahead, and you are getting direct solar radiation all year long. And because of this, it is always warm. Here's it is in pictorial form. So you can see in the poles, the angle of the sun's very dramatic, so it's always cold. The temperate is going to change depending on the season. And so you have some seasons that are really, really hot and some seasons that are really, really cold. And then the equator where it is always warm. Our abiotic factors are those non-living things. So this is what's going to affect your ecosystem that is not living. So the amount of light, your ecosystem is driven by light. The basis of all food chains is the sun. So we are going to get energy into our food chains from solar radiation. And so we have to have light in our environment. Light is essential for photosynthesis with our autotrophic organisms. The next one here is temperature. Everything has an ideal temperature at which it's going to live. All of the chemical reactions in the body that allow you to break down the sugar that you eat and to build up your muscles, those are all enzyme-driven reactions. And as you're going to find out in the next unit, enzymes are all temperature related. And so depending on what you evolve in, what temperatures, your enzymes are going to work best at those temperatures. And if we take you out of those temperatures, now you're unable to do the chemical reactions that your body needs to do. Most things can survive for a short period outside of this range, but they'll die if exposed to unfavorable conditions for a long period of time. If I were to throw you up into the tundra in shorts and a t-shirt, you'll survive for maybe a day, but any longer than that without shelter or warm clothes, you're not going to make it because it is outside your ideal temperature range. Life on Earth generally survives in a range of 32 to 122 degrees, so between freezing and boiling, essentially. Over the summer this year, Death Valley got to 130, so that's at the way, way extreme for anything to survive at. Water is another abiotic factor here. You are mostly water, so humans are about 75% water, which means if I were to murder you and dehydrate you, you would weigh 75% less. Water is needed for almost every chemical reaction in your body, so every chemical reaction is either adding water or subtracting water. Oxygen is necessary for heterotrophic organisms. Even your plants need oxygen because in order for those cells to germinate and to grow, they need oxygen. Plants are going to do cellular respiration. They're going to use oxygen to break down the sugars that they're storing. The depth or elevation at which life is found is limited by oxygen. So when you get up in elevation and the atmosphere becomes really thin and there's not a lot of oxygen up there, you see a lot less organisms living. All right, biotic, these are the living factors. The first one here is food. So how many organisms live in an environment is dependent on how much food is available in that environment. So if you don't have a lot of plants, you're not going to get a lot of bunnies. If you don't have a lot of bunnies, you're not going to get a lot of coyotes. So the amount of food determines the amount of organisms in any environment. Predation. Predation is the act of one organism eating another organism. The amount of predation limits the population. I love ecology because there's a lot of what I call no-duh science statements in here. The amount of predation limits the population. If I have a lot of coyotes, what happens to the bunny population? It goes down because the coyotes are eating the bunnies. If I have a lot of hillbillies, then the amount of coyotes might go down because the hillbillies are eating the coyotes. Disease is a limiting biotic factor. Disease has the possibility to wipe out an entire population. The denser that population, the more quick that disease is going to spread throughout that population. Think about coronavirus. Where did it hit first? It hit New York City, which is a very densely populated area, which allowed the spread of the coronavirus to really take off in that densely populated area. So the higher the population, the greater chance the disease will run rampant. Competition, a group of organisms trying to use the same resource or prey item. And if you look at my picture here, all of these sea lions here are trying to get up on this rock. They are going to compete for this rock. It's like king of the hill, right? They're going to knock each other off. That's competition. And you can have competition both within the species, like here, or between two species. Symbiosis is a relationship where two animals live closely together, and there are different kinds of symbiosis. Mutualism, both animals are going to benefit from this activity. So in a mutualistic behavior or relationship, both organisms are getting something out of it. If you look here at our rhino and our oxpecker, this rhino is getting the ticks removed off of its back. The oxpecker is eating those ticks, and so it's getting a food source. This is a mutualistic relationship. They are both benefiting from this relationship. Commensalism, only one organism benefits. The other one could care less. One organism benefits, one is neither benefited nor harmed. It's like, yeah, whatever, do what you like, fine. When we look here, this clownfish is living in the sea anemone. The sea anemone gets nothing out of this relationship. The sea anemone doesn't care that the clownfish is there, but the clownfish is getting protection because the sea anemone has little stingers on it, and so nothing's going to come into that sea anemone to eat that clownfish. And then parasitism, one animal benefits, one is harmed. I love parasites. So if you've got a strong stomach, come back, and that green word there for parasitism, if you click on it, it links you to a video of some really cool parasites. But in parasitism, one animal benefits, the parasite, and one animal is harmed, the host. If you think about tapeworms in the old time by royalty used to be a diet trend. So people would eat tapeworm eggs. The tapeworm goes in, hooks into the intestines, and sucks up all of the nutrients of that person in the intestine. The tapeworm benefits because it's getting all the nutrients and it grows and it grows and it grows. The host is harmed because the host no longer gets those nutrients. By the way, the royals would eventually die. They'd be thin when they died, but they would eventually die because of this tapeworm. Most parasites will eventually kill the host. It's not necessarily the goal of the parasite to kill the host, but it's a byproduct of the parasitism. This is just a worm that has burrowed in between this guy's toes and it's living in the leg. And this worm is basically sucking up the nutrients from the blood flow around where that worm has burrowed. Okay, the idea of a niche. A niche defines the role that the organism plays in the ecosystem. So what is this organism's job? Where does it live? What does it eat? And what eats it? So we're going to take all of that into account. So when you describe the niche of an organism, you're going to tell me where it lives, what it eats, and what eats it. Because animals have different niches, you can have a lot of animals living in a small space. So if you look down here at our shorebirds, they are all eating something different. And because they are all eating something different, they can all live in that shore area together. They're not competing because they've got their own individual resources that they're going after. And I recommend that you watch these 3 videos. Okay, that is the end of the lecture. Please come in and watch these videos and they will help you understand what I talked about today.